Welcome to this explainer. Today we're elevating our discourse way beyond the verse-by-verse mechanics of Nagarjuna's Paramārthastava to really synthesize its deep overarching conclusions. Now, as scholars and practitioners of Madhyamaka, you are already intimately familiar with the foundational tenets of emptiness and dependent origination. But here we're zooming out to look at the ultimate big picture. Specifically, how Nagarjuna brilliantly bridges the ultimate and the conventional to forge a dynamic, fully lived praxis.
Okay, let's dive right in by confronting the central paradox of our existence as Madhyamaka practitioners. How exactly do we operate within a reality that is fundamentally empty of inherent existence? Think about it. If everything is truly like a mirage, dependently co-arisen and completely without an absolute core, how do we justify conventional actions like devotion, praise, or even the cultivation of compassion? It's a massive question, and it really strikes at the very heart of how we walk the path.
We're going to chart this conceptual journey in 5 quick steps. First, the paradox of praise. Then, the framework of unions. From there, acting without acting, transcending extremes, and finally, the ultimate fruit. Let's get into it.
Starting with Section 1, the paradox of praise, or how we go about praising the completely ineffable.
Verse 1 of the text hits us immediately with the ultimate tension. Nagarjuna basically asks, how do you conventionally praise a Dharmadhatu that is non-dual, unutpada, and entirely beyond spatial or linguistic distinctions? I mean, the intellect literally hits a brick wall right here. How can our language, which is entirely reliant on dualistic boundaries, possibly capture, let alone praise, a reality that outright refutes those exact boundaries?
But Nagarjuna doesn't just throw his hands up in philosophical defeat. Not at all. In verse 2, he immediately meets this impossibility of conceptual capture with praxis. He consciously applies a highly devoted behavioral pattern that aligns perfectly with emptiness. He uses conventional designations, sure, but not out of ignorance, out of absolute mastery.
It's brilliant, really.
Because he completely flips standard samsaric conditioning on its head. Instead of conventional action blinding us to ultimate reality, it becomes the very instrument we use to honor it.
So this establishes the crucial paradigm of praising without praising. We're engaging in the conventional act, but without reifying the 3 spheres of praiser, praising, and praised. We act in the conventional truth, that's T1, while firmly holding the wisdom of its ultimate emptiness, or T2. It's like an illusion. It's totally there, yet completely not there. The act of devotion is entirely genuine, but it's completely free from the grasping that defines typical samsaric action. Moving on to Section 2. Let's look at the framework of the unions and how we bridge these 2 truths.
When you put Samvritti-Satya right up against Paramārthastava, it's a powerful reminder that one truth absolutely does not deny the other. Actually, one implies and supports the other in total perfect harmony. They're mutually co-defined. You see, conventional truth isn't just some lie we eventually toss aside. It's the dependently co-arisen display of ultimate truth itself. You literally cannot have one without the other.
And whether we're mapping out the union of the 2 truths, the 3 spheres of action, or the 3 kayas, the underlying principle is identically profound. Reality is a dynamic unity, guys. It is not some static, absolute void. All of these elements are dependently co-originated, yet entirely empty of inherent existence. They weave together to form a reality that is simply the ineffable middle way.
This progression really highlights generalized Madhyamaka reasoning. It shows us exactly how rigorous deconstruction leads directly into the dynamic, lived union of the 2 truths. We start with the Catuskoti to strip away every extreme view, right? That reveals emptiness, which in turn perfectly allows for dependent origination. The ultimate realization isn't nothingness. It's this final step. It's the active, lived integration of the 2 truths.
Which brings us to Section 3, acting without acting, or how this becomes our daily praxis.
This is the operational core right here. How do we take this high-level union and actually live it? Well, this defines acting without acting. It's operationalizing the union of the 2 truths, where your everyday actions transform into adapted, skillful means that gradually dissolve avidya and apadana. You're still chopping wood, you're still carrying water, you're still cultivating compassion and generating merit, but, and this is key, you're doing it all without the clinging that turns those actions into karmic traps. The action itself remains totally pure.
The major takeaway is that realizing the emptiness of all phenomena does not annihilate conventional truths. It actually frees us up to use them perfectly as antidotes. Think about it. When you know a mirage is just a mirage, you don't panic when you can't drink the water, but you can still stand back and appreciate the optical illusion for what it is. In that exact same way, the emptiness of a situation frees you to act with absolute, unhindered skill within it.
Section 4. Transcending extremes and avoiding philosophical traps.
Here is the subtle balance of navigating the conceptual mind. Notice how clinging to any of these extreme positions just traps your mind in an error. Lean entirely into existence, you get naive realism. Reject everything, you plunge straight into nihilism. The middle way demands that we transcend these dualistic concepts, the dyads, triads, and quads, without just rejecting them outright. Our job is to thread the needle right down the middle, refusing to get backed into any conceptual corner.
And we transcend those extremes by using concepts and dualities as mere tools, firmly rooted in the union of the two truths in action. This guarantees we never become bound by the very constructs we're using to navigate samsara. It's kind of like a master musician. They don't look at the rigid rules of music theory or the physical limits of a guitar as constraints. They use them as the very vehicles for creating transcendent art. They master the structure so thoroughly that the structure itself becomes their liberation. They use the tool absolutely does not use them.
Finally, Section 5. The ultimate fruit, our enlightened action.
Acting more and more in accord with reality as it is ultimately means embodying the Buddha's own inseparable union of wisdom and compassion. This is where theory transforms into the ultimate fruit of enlightened action. Wisdom without compassion, that can easily become a cold, distant void. And compassion without wisdom can just turn into exhausting, attachment-driven burnout. But united, they become a seamless, beautiful dance. You basically become the living embodiment of the Paramārthastava.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over as you navigate the beautiful, illusory mirage of your own daily praxis. How are you going to apply the union of the two truths in action to transcend the fixations of your own conceptual mind today? When the rubber meets the road, how do you praise? How do you act? How do you truly live? Keep that question front and center. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep walking the middle way.